Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, distinguished panelists and distinguished attendees. It is such an honor and privilege to have you today on this panel discussion. I would like to just welcome Mark Nelson, who's dialing in from the United States, Angel Adelaja, who is somewhere in Ogun State, and Professor Ogumoyela. We have one more panelist we're expecting, but I think we'll get started because time is money and we're all extremely busy people. I would just like to ask each of the panelists to just spend a minute telling us about themselves. Instead of me reading your long and very impressive bios, just tell me a bit about yourself and what you do and in your current capacity. So I'll start with Mark.
Thank you, Ndidi, and it's humbling to be part of this panel. My name is Mark Nelson. I serve as a principal in the Context Network and as the managing director of Context Global Development. I have over 19 years of experience leading strategy and management consulting engagements for industry-leading biotechnology, agriculture, and food companies, as well as working to support private foundations and intergovernment agencies. Prior to joining Context, the start of my professional career was with Pioneer Hybrid, a seed company, now a Corteva business, working in production planning and scheduling, and also serving in a Six Sigma capacity to lead several various process improvement initiatives to improve and streamline operations. So I've been around seeds my whole life and had an opportunity to work very closely with the Sahel team on several innovations, technology innovations to support seed companies and processors in Nigeria. And thank you for this opportunity to share some thoughts and views today.
Thank you, Mark. And some of you might remember Mark from the video earlier today. Thank you, Mark, for your very kind words. It's been a joy partnering with you and the entire Context team. Angel, can you just tell us a bit about yourself? Angel wears many hats, so I wonder what hats she'll share with us today. Angel. Oh, Angel, you're muted. Can you unmute? Because now we can't hear you. No, it's too faint. We'll come back to you, Angel. Angel, can you increase the volume? For some reason, we can't hear you. Or take off the video. Maybe that will help. All right, while we wait for Angel, let's hear from Professor Gumoyela. Go ahead, Prof.
Thank you very much, Ndidi. And really, it's my pleasure to be on this panel. Let me use the opportunity, first of all, to congratulate Sahel at 10. It's nice to be part of the journey, and I commend you for all the hard work and for being able to organize this global conference, despite the challenges of COVID-19. Let me say that about myself. I'm a professor of food science and technology. I've been on the landscape for about the last 40 something years since I came back to Nigeria. I'm at Bells University of Technology as a pioneer professor of food science and technology, and I also lead the Lighthouse consulting team. I'm also aware of a number of other hats. We have the Consumer Advocacy Initiative for Food Safety and Nutrition, which Kafsani, which I'll be happy for you to follow us online, because that really ties in very much to what we're doing today. I've had a career spanning in research, academics, industry, and in the last, maybe in the last 13, 14 years, a very much part of the development landscape. So I have a very unique privilege. I was a technical manager for Cadbury for quite a number of years. And I think that, and I also held a commercial hat. And I believe that really having had all of these experiences, they bring me to the table fully challenged about the problems in Africa. Of course, the one I wasn't.
Prof, we'll come back to you.
At that point, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Angel, can we hear you now?
Yes, I hope you can hear.
Yes. Go ahead.
Let's try it again. Thank you so much for having me. I am so grateful to the Sahel team and want to congratulate the Sahel team on the amazing work that they've been doing over the years, especially Ndidi, who is a mentor to me. I am the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Ogun State on agriculture. Before that, I've worked extensively in the development sector, focusing on agricultural innovation, focusing on grassroots mobilization to get people to engage in these technologies. I started an agri-tech company called Fresh Direct Nigeria that focuses on urban farming, as well as the Urban Farmers Network that's based in Abuja. It's a network of about 200 urban farmers together aggregate and We Farm Africa, which is just an advocacy group for agriculture in Nigeria. For me, I'm very, very passionate about technology and how to leverage on that technology for advancement in the and also how to make sure the technology is right-sized and used the right way. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Angel. So you can see we have a very qualified and capable group of panelists, and we're just so honored that they've taken the time to be with us today. So I'm going to start with my first question. I'm coming to you, Mark. Mark, when we look at the problems, we're often overwhelmed, but we have to leapfrog leveraging innovation and technology. From your vantage point, what are some of the very critical steps we need to take and some quick wins we can achieve to really achieve zero hunger and ensure food security on the continent?
Yeah, thank you. It's an exciting question, a very interesting question. I've been thinking about the question of how do we leverage technology in food and agriculture for 25 years now, going back to the days of doing my thesis at the University of Illinois and thinking about the adoption of yield monitoring technologies. The way that we think about the technology landscape is two kind of dimensions: how food is produced and then how food is stored and distributed. And so the ways in which we could better leverage that technology to establish some of these leapfrog opportunities. Let's start with how food is produced. We need to have more productive crops and more productive livestock. That means we need better access to more improved varieties. And we need to get improved varieties to market in shorter periods of time. We need farmers to be able to make better decisions so they can make their operations more efficient and utilize more precision. That means we need an increase in the availability and use of greener solutions like biologicals and microbials and regenerative agriculture. And we need to be farming smarter, which is a combination of mechanization and agricultural technologies that range from better planting all the way into the use of drones and robots and autonomous machines, which are now available. And there's just this emergence of machine learning so that we can better use data through AI technologies and machine learning that we're just sort of scratching the surface on today. And those are all kind of positioning even more novel approaches, like novel ways to get alternative proteins into a market today. It's a broad category, all the way from edible insects to plant-based proteins as alternatives to milk, such as soy and oat milk. And there's numerous companies out there today, whether it's General Mills, who we're partnering with on their high protein oat innovation, to Impossible Foods that are inspiring possibilities of cultured meats, to companies we're working with like Noblegen that are further innovating how microorganisms can become protein factories to produce meat and egg alternatives. So there's these different dimensions for us to be thinking about, from making the systems that we know today more productive, farmers making better decisions, to novel approaches to produce alternative proteins and even other production methods. So it's an exciting landscape. There's a pretty diverse area for us to be thinking about. So the steps to go through to really make progress in this area, for us, it starts with getting really good business plans within private sector and entrepreneurial spirit to really kind of better figure out how to adapt some of these technologies that are available to Nigeria today. I've lost your audio, Ndidi.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for those great insights. I'm going to come back to you as we talk about what practical next steps some of the entrepreneurs can take. But let me go to Angel. Angel, you have been doing leading efforts from the public sector, from the private sector, Can you give us some very practical interventions that you've been involved in? And what will it take for these interventions to scale?
Thanks so much. I was lighting up when Mark was talking about all of the different areas where I think, especially in Nigeria, we tend to look at mechanization as technology as tractors, 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 or apps, areas that we can be delving into and that people have been delving into. So I was happy to hear him talk about that. But from my end, I think I can start really with my experience, because when I started focusing on agri technology, it was need-based. You know, I ended up getting into hydroponic farming and vertical farming because I needed to, well, first of all, I couldn't waste my investment, and I needed to find a way to continue to make money from my investment, and make sure that I get my products closer to market and just kind of fix some of the problems that I was facing. But around that time, people were not really focused on investment in agri innovation and technologies other than, you know, rural planting of cassava and improved varieties and the likes, you know. So it was kind of novel at the time. But you can see in the past, let's say 10 years, how rapidly the ag tech sector and the space has grown, especially in Nigeria and East Africa. And a lot of that has been because, number one, you've had people looking to solve the problems that, let's say, governments, agencies may not necessarily, or research institutions may not necessarily have been able to. So you see the shift from research institutions driving R&D to private startups driving that R&D. And so one thing I would say is that if government starts to focus more on R&D, but leaving space for SMEs to play a significant role in the research and development field, and giving SMEs the opportunity to test and retest, I think that's very helpful. So with what we've been doing in Ogun State, I've always been a big advocate for agri. The same way we have all of these tech hubs, you need agri-tech hubs, agri-tech labs that are specific for agriculture. And so in the past few years, you've seen that. You also see that here in Ogun State with the Ag Lab and Innovation Center that we've been promoting. Also leveraging on technology for land mapping, leveraging on technology to make sure that it's easier for Ogun State to provide land to people who want to be able to get into agriculture. That's some of the things that we're working on with our land allocation system. The other thing is being able to use technology as finance technology and put together models and systems that make these technologies easily accessible. And so from the government angle, it's important for us to work with CBN, work with NERSL especially. I have to shout out NERSL and the Central Bank of Nigeria for being able to work with us on pilots and models where instead of trying to sell the technology on its own, you have a full financial, full operating system for farmers to key into. Because if you give a farmer a technology and he doesn't see right away the financial benefit for that technology, you can never sell it to him. In fact, he'll be the person to badmouth that technology everywhere he goes. But if you're able to put it into the context of, and he can see end to end how it's profitable, you see that people will start to adopt it. For example, geotagging of farms to make sure that we can monitor and evaluate those farms as they're producing, and we are able to make sure that we're able to recall whenever somebody gets a loan on that land for farming, we're able to make sure that they repay. You know, a farmer is never going to pay for that process to happen. But when we embed it to the economics of production and the money that the bank provides to the farmer, he knows that it's going to come from its profits because we've already given him improved seeds and other things. It's very, very easy for a farmer to pay for that sort of innovation. And so I think that we've done that through, let's say, the Anchor Borrowers program for agricultural financing, it's something we can also do for infrastructure development. So irrigation technologies, focusing on improved varieties for other things, not just cassava, maize, rice, and soya bean, but also for vegetables, for bananas, looking at tissue culture as well, linking those companies who are working on those innovations to the farmers through these kind of financial programs that you have available. It's a win-win for the companies who need that revenue to come for them to continue to improve on their research and development. And it also benefits the farmers because they are in real time seeing the dividends of that research and development. I think also focusing on this concept of monetizing the research and development, especially for the academic institutions, because once that research is done, what is the next step? It's not just to sit on the shelf, but it's to make sure that it's implemented. So one thing you'll see is that the extension arms have been strongly mobilized, focus on how do you get those technologies to the farmers. And so part of what we do is leveraging on our extension arm, training them on the latest technologies, and then working with farmers for those people who are working on these technologies to test them out, to scale them out with the farming community. So those are areas in which we've been able to play. I think from the private sector end and from the cooperative end, our Urban Farmers Network focuses on farmers who focus on urban agriculture and leverage on technology for that urban agriculture. And one of the things that we also realize is the need for coordination. You have a lot of people with great ideas, especially in Nigeria. And one of the things that has limited us is that you may have one major company get financing, but when we're able to advocate for, let's say, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to put agric technology and agric research and development into their budget, it means that there's more money to invest in companies like ours. I remember when I started Fresh Direct Nigeria, I started it 10 months before a company called Squared Roots, right? Elon Musk's brother and another gentleman, Tobias Pegg. However, they were backed by USDA. They were backed by grants in the US. They had a capital investment, and they've been able to scale what it is that they're doing faster than we've been able to. But it's because the government also understood the benefit of pushing those types of technologies. And so it's easier for someone like me to partner with a foreign firm than one that's domestic, because of the fact that they've been able to tap into a lot more funds. So part of what we do in Ogun State is also linking those who have innovative technologies to finance, linking them to funding where they can continue to scale. So we partner with international organizations. We partner with private companies as well. We partner with different foundations to make sure that these individuals have the financing to be able to have enough of a window to scale those technologies.
Angel, you are doing such amazing work, and you've raised some very critical issues. You know, how commercial, the link between research institutions and farmers, how commercialized some of these ideas, how do we monetize some of these ideas, and also the critical link with financing. And I'm so glad that we've been joined by Manashri, who is from South Africa, and she's doing amazing work from the government perspective in a research institution. And when I met with her team, I was blown away. I said, South Africa is a leading country when it comes to innovation and technology. And with your team, you're driving that. So can you share just a bit about what you do, Manashri? And then can you tell us, respond to some of what Angel has talked about, the link between private sector and your work, and how you're bridging that, building those bridges to ensure the commercialization and the scaling of innovation and technology.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much, Ndidi, for the invitation today. It's really a privilege to come and speak on this panel, because I think when you work in isolation, when you think alone, and you act alone, you don't achieve as much impact as when you actually work together and you think together and you plan and create together. So I think, and that's a real point of departure when we talk about public-private partnerships. It's about co-creation. So and with that introduction, I'm from the Department of Science and Innovation. I manage a program for the agricultural bioeconomy in South Africa. And a lot of our work in the last 5-6 years has been around how can we use science, technology, and innovation to drive socioeconomic impact. So even as we started to bring in the new white paper on science, technology, and innovation, which is really demanding that we look at co-creation with industry, we look at partnerships, we look at ensuring that we transform the sector, we were already positioning ourselves to say, how can we invest in technologies that people use, that really have an impact on the ground? And that has been some of the driving force around what we call now, in terms of, we've got this new theory of change. We call it the innovation driving growth theory of change. So whereas in agriculture, yes, we work strongly with the agriculture department in terms of the mechanization. They work with the land issues, but we are looking at what are the critical technologies needed to increase GDP, to make sure that there are more farmers who become more profitable in terms of the, the outputs. And we do that through quite an programs, for example, where we look at increasing yields and increasing drought and heat tolerance, for example, in wheat. We have a new program in maize, but also looking at agriculture and agro-processing, but very specifically, and the real change is about how do you strengthen innovation value chains? How do you not just focus on developing the technology, but make sure that if you are, for example, we have a few projects in Marula where we're starting to say we need to build a value chain back from the back end, increase the supply side, take care of making sure you have the necessary technologies to process, the nurseries to supply those farmers before you build a factory. Because if you build a factory first and then try to get processing in through it, and you haven't built a value chain, and you haven't taken care of how will farmers access it, how will they have all the tools, not only innovation, but all the other aspects to make sure that they can produce and they can process and that they can make a living with it. So I think Dr. Shah illustrated quite a number of these things. It's about sustainability. It's also, as you invest in these technologies, what is its longevity? How will it be used? Now, there's a couple of things that we also look at, and in South Africa we have this paradigm. We have national food security, but we have household food insecurity. So while some of the innovations and increased productivity continue to feed national food security, it's about what are then the other innovations. And that's where the agro-processing, the food and nutrition that you talked about, starts to become more important in terms of, for example, we have some very simple programs where we look at nixtamalization, very old traditional technology of enhancing how you process your maize so that you have more niacin in the diet. So there's a number of paradigms to it. And I think before because I can talk a lot, before I go into the other aspects, I want to talk about then critically the role of public-private partnerships in driving this value chain approach. We as government, yes, we put in policy. We try to look at, for example, how does the theory of change work, but we are trying to bring partners on board at all angles, bringing in the trusts, the different funding bodies, bringing in the farmer development associations, and looking at how we look at multi-stakeholder, multi-partner projects that have this value chain approach. And we are doing it looking first at starting with per commodity value chain, doing that assessment. Who would grow it? Where would it grow? Are they farmers? Do they have the support? And then bringing in then the other government departments and necessary players who also then assist farmers with the mechanization, with the inputs that Angel was talking about. So a number of critical elements. In order for it all to come together, we have to work together. And we are realizing that through some of the partnerships that we've put together. For example, looking at a new biosecurity research hub. The input that we support in terms of the research to drive detection, diagnosis of pests and diseases, and the end goal of putting in the necessary partnerships with industry in terms of farmer development support programs who help those farmers with the disease diagnosis. At a national level, and this is working with the government, with the Department of Agriculture, it's about building those early warning systems. So there's quite a number of ways of looking at it, but you have to ensure that you have flexible systems that really can drive the impact you need. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
There.
You know, I was so
Thank you.
impressed with the holistic perspective that the South African government is taking. And you cover so many issues that many of our countries are just starting to think about. So thank you and well done. Professor Olubenga, are you back with us?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm coming to you now because we've talked a lot about production, and we've talked about the what they call the upstream. And I want you to talk about the downstream. I want you to talk about processing, food safety, consumption. You know, how can we leverage innovation and technology to ensure that we have nutritious food for our people, but also safe food for our people? And what are you seeing that's working in the ecosystem?
Thank you very much. Essentially, I believe that, listening to the other speakers, it's very clear that Africa must be a continent in a hurry when it comes to this. Because for about, say, so many decades, for 4 or 5 decades after independence, we focused so much on primary agriculture production, and we neglected the area of post-harvest handling, processing, and all of that, all of the other aspects of the value chain. But it's now very clear that if the population is projected to even double again by the year 2050, and we are talking of a continent moving from about 1.2 billion people to about another 2.4, 2.5 billion in 30 years, then we do have a challenge on our hands. So I say, first of all, that it must be a continent in a hurry. First, number one, you look at what are the challenges. The challenges have to do with protein, energy, malnutrition. They have to do with micronutrient deficiencies. Many households can only afford one particular type of staple crop. They can't even afford a combination of crops that will provide, say, protein and carbohydrates. There are families that actually depend only on sorghum or depend on maize and depend on rice or anything like that. So we've got to look at a way by which we are going to leverage on technology. First of all, we can no longer run away from the reality of safe genetically modified foods of genetically modified origin. And that's why one of the things that we'll find in the national food policy right now is the issue of biofortification of our staples, because then that will help us to address the issue of hidden hunger. Now, let me come to some other specifics. Look at the issue of cassava. Cassava, Nigeria is the world's largest producer of cassava and has been. And despite the fact that we produce about 44, 45 million metric tons every year, Nigeria is not on the world map when it comes to starch production. We're still spending millions we're still spending billions we're still spending billions importing starch into the country, whether from maize or from cassava. But here we are today. The government started a revolution which was supposed to be sustained somewhere around 2003, 2004. And we brought some innovations into that and said, look, why transport tubers that contain so much water across so many hundreds of kilometers, and then the tubers get spoiled within a short time? Let's begin to look at on-site processing at the farm level so that you produce what we call intermediate moisture foods, and you are able to transport the dewatered mash to the factories for processing into whatever you want to use them for. And that technology is already now well entrenched in many of these clusters. And the cooperatives are actually implementing this because electricity is another challenge. Now, talking about electricity, I would also say, for example, that we start a lot of buying into some of these technologies, even at research level, but we never scale them up to be able to take benefit. For example, when we talk about solar technology, so much money has been sunk into actually ensuring that solar panels that will work have actually been researched into. But to be able to scale up becomes a problem. And yet here we are with a packing and cold chain infrastructure that is suffering and begging. And that's where a huge part of our food losses actually happen within the chain, because we find that many people, I mean, by the time fruits and vegetables, meat products are transported over long distances, you then come and realize that, look, a lot of losses are suffered. And people are eating unsafe foods. And I mean, Nigeria is probably one of the, I mean, worst hit countries when it comes to unsafe foods being consumed. And a lot of families, because they are ill-informed, will eat many of these things because they cannot afford it. Many people prefer to, I mean, the only thing they can do is to buy foods from street vendors. They can't even go, you know, and they buy foods from street vendors. Many of these things are already contaminated one way or another. So when we look at the issues of food safety along the entire chain, we know we do have a big challenge. And that's one of the reasons why advocacy has become extremely important, because we have a largely illiterate population and we need to be able to communicate to them in the language that they will understand and in the way that will actually help them to protect themselves. Because, for example, if you are eating food that is contaminated, of course, we say that, okay, in this COVID season, the virus will only stay on the, can only survive for about 6 to 8 hours, fine. So, and it doesn't get transmitted through food, fine. But what happens when you are actually buying these things and you are actually under very unsanitary conditions? The regulatory environment is a challenge. And so we need to be able to look at how we are going to translate many of these into actions through advocacy, which is the reason why Consumer Advocacy for Food Safety and Nutrition Initiative actually came in the first place. Let me also mention that I like the fact that Angel mentioned earlier, the fact that you talk about aggregators and cooperatives, because in a situation where you do have challenges, we know that digital technology can help us. But here we are. If you do, internet is a big challenge. You cannot maximize the opportunities in digital technology if you have no access to internet. And so we are encouraged. I think that we need to encourage aggregators and cooperatives and ensure that they can actually pull resources together and be able to benefit in such ways. And of course, one last point is the fact that in many countries, we need to be able to borrow from other countries. Nanotechnology is becoming a very strong force in terms of helping to develop to improve the shelf life of products and to be able to present packaging materials that will actually help to retain the integrity of the products. And where countries are already beginning to think of this, these are the kind of technologies that we should be looking at as a way of actually helping to extend this. And I believe very strongly that if we are able to stabilize the sector by reducing our food losses, if we are able to reduce the food losses that we suffer annually, definitely we're on the path to food security. And simultaneously, if we now attend to that, you know, side by side with the attention to high yielding crops, which opportunities extend to us from genetically modified products, then we do have a very, very significant opportunity, because farmers cannot continue to generate 1 metric ton for all their efforts for a whole year when they have no access to irrigation facilities and so on and so forth. These are some of the areas in which technology can help us to not only reduce the challenges that we're having right now, but if we make more food available and we develop the chain, then of course, nutrition is going to be enhanced and people are going to be much better off for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You've raised so many issues, Prof. So many. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking there's so many opportunities, so many problems, and innovation and technology can fix a lot of them. But what is holding us back? So I'm going to ask all of you, and I'm starting with Mark now. Tell us, first of all, give us one practical example of an innovation that you've been involved in that's scaling, and then end with what message, what singular thing, what action can we take away from here? Because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go for a full round again because all of you have such a wealth of experience. So please combine those two questions as your closeout. And then I'll encourage the participants to type in your questions for the participants because sadly, we're not going to have time to really open up the floor. So if you have a question for Mark or Angel or Manushree or Professor Lubenga, please type them in and they will respond. So Mark, over to you.
Yeah, so in the past 5 years where we've been working together in Nigeria on trying to achieve the potential of some ag technologies, I guess what I can speak to you is it's hard. It's complicated. There's a lot of things to figure out, and trying to figure out what that first next step is difficult. There's a simple sort of model that we've worked together to try to address and realize the potential of technology within an entrepreneurial environment, and it's test prove scale. So every company needs to go through a process of really better understanding and knowing how the technology is going to be applied into their business, test it, make sure they've got the economics figured out on it before they can go through and actually prove and scale that technology. One of the techniques that we've been working together on in some of the vegetatively propagated seed system work is called backstops. B stands for getting a good business plan. A stands for the agro.
Lost Mark when he was explaining backstops. I think he'll join us again. And that is such a profound approach, which Context Global has been leading very successfully. So while we wait for Mark to join us, I'm going to ask Angel to take on the same question. Angel. Okay, Mark is coming back. Mark, are you back? Yes, you're back. Great. Can you hear me, Mark? Can you hear me, Mark?
I'm sorry, I'm having some connection problems right now. Let me try to reconnect.
I heard you. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, Angel, why don't you take that question then? Go ahead, Angel. I can't hear you, Angel. No, there's no volume.
Saying is that for me, what I put out a call because I know my governor. He's always asks me all of these conferences, talk. What are we doing? And so I would love to pull out a call to action for those who are here in this platform. I know for Ndidi and Sahel and for others, we turn this conference into something that actually is implemented afterwards. And so I know that there's the African Agricultural Incubator Network and other things like that. But is there a way, indeed, can we work after this offline to start putting something together to try to aggregate all of the ag tech hubs, cooperatives, organizations, initiatives? Let's start to get private sector to key in. Let's start to identify the existing technologies that need support, but let's also start putting out and advocating for financing and funding of the specifically agri technology. Because when you look at all of the different technology sectors across board, the fastest growing sector when it comes to technology investment is ag tech, you know. And so for us, we don't want Africa to be left behind on that. If that's something that we can agree to today, I can, on behalf of Ogun State, agree to that we are, you know, pledged and determined to see that happen, you know. And then for those who are interested in Ogun State as a home that will help to support you as you develop your agri technology businesses, that's something that we're interested in. And then also for those who are international and are looking for local partners on the continent, we also say that Ogun State is also a place where you can come and work with our farmers, work with our private sector, because we have industries that are interested in seeing how to turn technologies into applied innovations, not just research technologies. So thank
All right. Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? I can hear you, and Diddy. Can you hear me, Angel? Can you hear me?
Somebody teased you that you're having network challenges in the United States.
It seems as though we are. Yeah, I'm
Mark, can you
sorry for
hear
that.
me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
maybe you can proceed and tell us about the backstops. You were just about to tell us about the backstops.
Okay. Yeah, for us, application of ag tech, as was previously mentioned, um, to us, it's about getting a business plan in place. That's the B in backstops. A is about agronomy when dealing with plant sciences and the technical aspects of having the application of that technology realize its potential. Really understanding the agronomic implications are critical. Quality stands for those quality control standards that we need to have in order to satisfy customers, as Mercy kind of described before, like for our customers to really see the impact. Pulling all that together are the stops, those standardized tools and operating procedures, just really good disciplines in business to really make sure that that customer experience can be repeated. So practically speaking, how have we applied that? We've been working closely on establishing formalized seeds supply systems in cassava and yam. I'm working with Nigerian processors to support outgrowers and deliver new improved cassava planting material to their farmers. And for yam, working with medium small size seed companies to essentially extend their businesses to be a supplier of yam seed as well. Two crops that are very critical to the Nigerian economy and much need to have better access to improved varieties.
And thank you for your good work, Mark. I mean, you have been pioneering some phenomenal work on the continent and commercializing amazing research. So thank you for that. And please type up what backstop means in the chat because I'm sure some people missed one of the acronyms and would love to follow up with you. We lost Angel, and Angel was sharing an action for all of us to take around incubation centers across Africa and promoting financing. Angel, if you can hear me, maybe you want to finish that pitch because you said it's all about action. We don't want to just have another talk shop. We want some action. And if Angel, it's difficult for you to speak again. Can you type it in? Type in that idea because, like you said, we like to go from talk to action, and we don't want to just have a talk shop here. So please type that in. And Mark, one
Absolutely.
call to
So what I
action
will
for
do
the
is
entrepreneurs, the researchers, the policymakers on this platform from across the world who are focused on zero hunger in Africa and addressing these challenges. Can you give us one call to action that you're going to leave us with?
Yeah, call to action. Um, so with the way in which we're thinking about there's technology opportunities, the protein supply chain in Nigeria, beyond sort of working with the staple crops, is critical. I think Raj sort of defined this really important for us to think about how do you really support the protein supply chain sector. Currently, right now, there's 700,000 hectares of soya producing about that equivalent in metric ton. We need to double those yields. There's a protein gap to supply the growing poultry sector in Nigeria. We need to start with getting better protein more readily available and accessible. And so it really addressing some of those issues that protein deficiency have, not just sort of the chronic malnutrition, which is a really important zero hunger goal, but also the micronutrient deficiencies that relate to imbalanced diets. And just as the population is currently, growing very rapidly in Nigeria, those needs are going to only double over the next 30 years. So critical call to action today to get poultry protein supply chains as you're leading in dairy, but also in poultry and other sectors to really be able to be catalyzed to support the needs for more nutritious diets in the future. Be my first sort of critical next step.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, Angel, can you come back with your call to action that you were giving us? Okay, so Angel has typed it in, but would love to hear her speak it if she's still here. She said, we work with Sahel Backend to develop and coordinate an ecosystem for African ag tech that aggregates and identifies existing technology and ag tech hubs, but also identifies new technologies and finds ways to finance and support them. Fantastic. So if you're interested in joining this effort, please respond in the chat. We're noting down all those who want to get involved in this call to action. So please write your name and say, I'm interested in this call to action. If you're interested in Mark's call to action, please sign in as well. I know Mark has some phenomenal work on oats that he's leading, which is a protein, a very, very strong protein source. So please type in as well. I will be noting that. Can we hear from Manashri? What can we do to scale, and what call to action do you have, Manashri?
Thanks, Ndidi.
I cannot hear or see
so,
you, but I understand others can. So if you can speak up, please, so we can hear.
yes. Can you hear me?
Can others hear? Mark, can you hear? Can you see Manashri and hear her?
Manishri,
Okay.
I can hear you. You're coming through loud and clear to me.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Manishri, then.
Okay, so I was also going to talk about the agro innovation hubs. We have developed a model around agro innovation hubs, and exactly I want to support what Angel is saying about the need for the different role players in a particular cooperative or a farmer grouping or a particular district to come together to share who supports and also to identify who would support the innovation, who would be the partners who assist with the technology transfer, the processing, who is the public-private partnership, a partner that assists with the financing and assisting farmers with all the other aspects. And then this becomes sort of a driver for how you could achieve impact. We have what we call the red hubs in South Africa, but the innovation components in driving change in that would be a big change factor. And coupled with that, I also want to share that as we embark on new digital precision and technology, we need to make sure that it's fit for purpose, that there is a driver who works on how the tool, who does the tools, who does the mapping, who does the tools, but also the importance of digital decision support tools that are then transferred to these farmers, and the information that's been validated, scientific information that's been validated in good databases, and that information reaching the farmer to assist him to farm more efficiently. I think that is a big game changer, and understanding that not every farmer needs a drone. He needs the data from remote sensing and from the drone technology, but he doesn't need a drone. He needs the best, good quality scientific information that's been harnessed and is available to him so that he can farm better, that he can optimize his yields, etc. So that would be for us, that is where we are at in terms of how do we make it accessible. The big farmers, they can buy this off the shelf. The pick loggers from Technovation, the big, all of the other. But how do we create systems that are much more affordable to small-scale farmers, so that it can make an impact in their daily lives? So I think that is my message for today. And I think the other thing you were asking me was how would what is that was the call to action,
I have
right?
one last question for you. What can we do to replicate this amazing political goodwill and investment in South Africa, across Africa? What advice would you give us, those of us who want to make sure our governments are investing like your government is, and actually commercializing technology and engaging in demand-driven research? How can we replicate it?
So what we found from where we sit, it's really about good pilot demonstrations to show how it works. So while we are science and innovation, we invest in the technology, it's important for us to partner with key private sector organizations to say, this is how it should be done. This is how we're creating the impact. So I think with that, we have managed to also, in terms of the new master plans we are developing for the sector, to say this is how we need to drive impact. This is how we need to make sure that government sees the value across the, and remember, we've got provincial, we've got national. So we need a shared understanding of how is impact achieved, and through these demonstrations, and we've done a lot of these demonstrations with the private sector. Those key, and a lot of what you're doing, that fantastic work with the pilot programs in the dairy industry, those become game changers because people see the value. They see the number of farmers who have benefited. And I think often we put too much money without the targets. We put too much money without saying, are we getting, what are the numbers? How many farmers are becoming commercial? How many farmers are making a living from using this agro-processing technology? So those become game changers in terms of also convincing the private sector to put money in, because the thing is, we may have slightly different mandates, but we are chasing the same objective. And if we can get that right, if we can get the common understanding of what our roles are and how we can come together and share and drive sort of this kind of impact.
Thank you so much.
I hope I've answered your question.
The importance of data and proof of concept and messaging and storytelling and scaling is critical. I can see the chat box buzzing. People are interested in partnering with Angel. People are interested in partnering with Mark. I'm sure Manashri will have lots of people interested in partnering with her. So I'm going to give the final word to Professor Gumoyela. We have running out of time. I've been told to end the panel. It seemed like time went so quickly. But Professor Gumoyela, what is your call to action? What idea do you want to put on the table for us to galvanize around to transform this ecosystem, leveraging innovation and technology? Prof, I can't hear you. It might just be me.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's from my end. You can hear me now, I'm sure. Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Thank you. Ndidi, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay. That's
I can
good,
hear
thanks.
you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that quickly, let me just make 3 key points. One is that SMEs are the bedrock of serious economies. And in Africa, we need to empower our SMEs to become a lot more knowledge seeking and knowledge based. Our experience, for example, over the last 2-3 years, we have been able to impact at least 30 different SMEs, who many of them young graduates who have been in the business only in the last 5-6 years and really did not have a clue about what food science and technology or whatever it is was all about. And just working with them, we've been able to transform many of these businesses. And they've been able to, in fact, take on from where we left them just by imparting knowledge and being able to guide them as to what they need to do. So I think rather than people traditionally say money, 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 if you take the right steps and you actually begin going in the right direction, people are going to discover what you have to offer, and therefore support will come. And I think that has been the experience of many of the SMEs that we have been working with over the last few years. Now, having said that, let me say that one thing that we cannot run away from is the fact that whereas the developed countries, China, the USA, spend nothing less than more than 500 billion US dollars on R&D every year. But here we are. Going by the latest statistics, only South Africa spends about 6 billion in the whole of Africa. Only South Africa spends about 6 billion on R&D every year. We don't even spend up to $50 million in Nigeria And I was very happy to see Church Fund actually advocating. This is the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, advocating recently that, look, government has got to start with a bold move of not a minimum of $1 billion must be allocated to R&D every year. And that is the only way we are going to change the narrative. People expect so much. Nigeria, for instance, in spite of the challenges of not being funded, well, we still find that in the first 40 countries that are very, very well published all over the world, you find Nigeria there. And yet, we are not giving the adequate support to R&D in our research, academic research institutions. And many initiatives. I remember when we first went to Adamawa State in some 10, 12 years ago, and we started a fortification plant so that most of the products that come from the informal markets will actually be fortified at the home scale level. You take your milled maize and milled rice or whatever, and you go and fortify. And the project was funded. And the government told us that, look, after when this project is over, when the funding is over in 2 years, we'll take it over. But believe me sincerely, after 2 years, that was the end of the project. So we've got to find a situation in which we are constantly looking at how we can take advantage of these technologies. We have more than 60% of our households that operate from the informal markets. So it's not about supermarkets and big operations. We need to be able to cater for those people if we're going to address the issues of food safety, of adequate nutrition, even in our ecosystem. And that is a major challenge that I actually see in all of this. So I will leave this by saying, look, let's begin to support our SMEs. Let's begin to focus more on the informal markets. Let's begin to take those technologies to those places and let government cannot do it alone, of course, one must recognize that. But you see, government must take the lead in all of this. That's what's going to encourage the private sector to actually come on board. And I think that it's only a few states today that you can actually say that even at state levels, government is taking the right steps in that direction. Let's see more of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask all of you to give the panelists a round of applause. So much wisdom, knowledge, insight, experience. What my takeaway is that we need more Mark Nelsons, we need more Angel Adelajas, we need more Mashris, we need more Professor Lumwengas working together, proving that it can be done, changing mindsets, investing and scaling. And Angel, we're taking your challenge. We are going to work on amplifying your voices, building those bridges, and generating impact. So please join me in clapping for them and thanking them. This has been a phenomenal panel. We couldn't do justice to this topic in an hour, and that hour has gone by really quickly. I'll invite all of you to please go back to the main stage for a new set of panels and continue to engage with each other and form those partnerships and the relationships. And we have networking after the conference, online networking, so you can talk to all of these panelists one-on-one. Thank you. God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye. Thank you,
Thank you.
Angel.